The sound of my son Travis's hand striking my face echoed through the living room 13 times, while his wife Melanie's laughter cut deeper than the physical pain. Blood trickled from my lip as tears clouded my vision. That day, something broke inside me, not just my heart, but the illusion that blood would always be thicker than water. 3 weeks later, while Travis was at work, I signed the papers to sell the house he thought was solely his. Sometimes, justice wears the face of a 68-year-old mother who has finally had enough. I never imagined I'd become a single mother at 35. When my husband David died suddenly from a heart attack, leaving me alone with our 5-year-old son Travis, I thought my world had ended. But motherhood doesn't allow for prolonged grief. There were school lunches to pack, skinned knees to bandage, and most importantly, bills to pay. For nearly 20 years, I worked double shifts as a nurse at Memorial Hospital, often picking up weekend work at the local clinic. Every extra dollar went toward Travis's future. I still remember the pride swelling in my chest when he walked across the stage at his college graduation. Finance degree in hand, Travis was going to have the opportunities David and I had only dreamed about. "Mom, I couldn't have done this without you," Travis had said that day, hugging me tight. "Everything I am, everything I'll become, I owe to you." Those words sustained me through many lonely nights after he moved to Portland for his first investment banking position. Our Sunday phone calls became the highlight of my week. I loved hearing the excitement in his voice as he described his rapid climb up the corporate ladder. "They're fast-tracking me for management," he told me during one call, practically bubbling with excitement, youngest team leader in company history. When Travis met Melanie at his firm 2 years later, he was immediately smitten. Their courtship was a whirlwind, and within 6 months, he called me with news of their engagement. "She's perfect, Mom," he gushed. "Smart, ambitious, beautiful. You're going to love her." I flew out for their engagement party, eager to welcome the woman who had captured my son's heart. Melanie was striking with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and designer clothes. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me, but I dismissed my uneasiness as nerves. "Jody, finally we meet," she said, air kissing near my cheek. "Travis talks about you," occasionally. Throughout dinner, I noticed how Melanie controlled the conversation, frequently cutting Travis off mid-sentence or contradicting him. He never seemed to mind, adapting to her narrative with an indulgent smile. When I mentioned his childhood dream of teaching economics, Melanie laughed sharply. "Teaching? With his salary potential? That's adorable," she said, patting my hand like I was a confused child. "We have plans for partner track, don't we, baby?" Travis nodded, avoiding my eyes. Melanie has really helped me focus my ambitions. After their wedding, which was far more lavish than either could afford, they began house hunting. One Sunday evening, Travis called me sounding defeated. "We found the perfect house in Lake Oswego, but the bank says my student loans are too high for the mortgage amount we need," he explained. "Another couple has already made an offer. Melanie's heartbroken." I heard muffled crying in the background. "How much do you need for the down payment?" I asked, already knowing what I would do. "$150,000, Travis replied. "But Mom, I'd never ask you for that." "You didn't ask," I said. "I'm offering. I've been saving since you were born. This is what that money was for." 2 weeks later, I flew out with a cashier's check and met them at the mortgage company. The colonial-style house was beautiful, with a manicured lawn and bay windows. Melanie was ecstatic, already discussing renovation plans with the realtor while I sat with Travis and the mortgage officer. "We just need your signature on several documents," the officer explained, sliding a stack of papers toward me. Travis squeezed my hand. "Just sign where the tabs are, Mom. It's all standard stuff." I trusted my son completely, signing where indicated without reading the dense legal text. Looking back, I should have questioned why my signature was needed on so many documents for their mortgage, but I was so happy to help them secure their dream home. After the closing, subtle changes began in Travis's behavior. Our weekly calls dwindled to monthly, then sporadically. When we did speak, he seemed distracted, often cutting conversations short when Melanie entered the room. 3 months after they moved in, I visited for dinner. Melanie had redecorated completely, with sleek modern furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable. "You look, well, considering your age," Melanie remarked while showing me around, "though you might want to consider updating your hairstyle. That cut adds years." I forced a smile, determined to maintain peace. Thank you for the suggestion. Travis, rather than defending me, nodded in agreement. Mom's never been very fashion conscious, have you, Mom? This pattern continued through dinner, with Melanie making backhanded compliments about my clothes, my career choice, even how I held my silverware. Each time, Travis either agreed or remained silent. 6 months later, a pipe burst in their basement, causing significant water damage. I flew out to help with cleanup while they dealt with insurance. While organizing paperwork that had been hastily moved from the basement office, I came across a folder labeled Mortgage Documents. Curious, I opened it, expecting to find payment records. Instead, I discovered something that made my heart skip. The deed to the house listed both Travis and me as co-owners. My name was on the mortgage too, making me legally responsible for a $500,000 loan I hadn't known about. I sat heavily in the office chair, papers trembling in my hands. My son had made me co-owner of his house without my knowledge or consent, using my good credit and assets to qualify for the mortgage they couldn't get on their own. I confronted Travis that evening, after Melanie went to bed. "Why is my name on your mortgage and deed?" I asked quietly, showing him the documents. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "It was just a technicality, Mom. The bank required a co-signer with more assets. It doesn't mean anything." "Travis, this makes me legally and financially responsible for your house. This is serious." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of his father. "Look, it was the only way to get the house. Melanie had her heart set on it. The loan officer suggested it, and it seemed like the perfect solution. You're helping us anyway, right? What's the difference?" "The difference is consent, Travis. You should have told me." "Would you have said no?" he challenged. "That's not the point, and you know it." He sighed heavily. "Let's not make this a big deal. What's done is done. I'm making the payments, you're not at risk, and we got our dream house. Everyone wins." I returned home troubled, but tried to rationalize Travis's actions as impulsive rather than manipulative. Perhaps this was a one-time lapse in judgment. It wasn't. Thanksgiving approached, and I expected an invitation to join them as we had discussed during my previous visit. When none came, I finally called Travis 2 weeks before the holiday. "Oh, Mom," he said, sounding distracted. "Didn't Melanie call you? We're doing Thanksgiving with her family in Seattle this year." "No, she didn't mention it," I replied, trying to hide my disappointment. "Sorry about that. You know how busy she gets with work. Maybe next year." Christmas brought a similar pattern. An invitation to their holiday party never arrived, though I later saw photos on social media showing a house full of guests, including some mutual friends who awkwardly admitted they'd been told I declined to attend due to health concerns. My birthday passed without a call. When I phoned Travis the next day, Melanie answered. "Travis is in the shower," she said coolly. "He feels terrible about forgetting your birthday. Men, right? I keep telling him to put these dates in his calendar. Could you have him call me back?" "Of course, Jody." First thing, he didn't call back that day, or the next. When he finally did, 3 days later, he brushed off my concerns. "Mom, you're being sensitive. We're incredibly busy right now. Melanie's up for promotion, and I'm managing a new portfolio." By spring, a disturbing pattern had emerged. Melanie had begun screening Travis's calls, always seeming to intercept when I phoned. Family gatherings consistently slipped her mind when it came to inviting me. Travis grew increasingly distant, our conversations perfunctory when they happened at all. For Memorial Day, I finally received an invitation to their backyard barbecue. Determined to improve relations with my daughter-in-law, I arrived with homemade potato salad and a bottle of Melanie's favorite wine. The afternoon proceeded pleasantly enough until dinner. Melanie had prepared a special shrimp pasta dish that she served with flourish. "Melanie," I said gently, "I hate to mention this, but I'm allergic to shellfish. Did Travis forget to tell you?" She covered her mouth in apparent horror. "Oh my goodness, I completely forgot. Travis mentioned it ages ago. How careless of me." Despite her words, I caught a gleam in her eye that suggested the mistake was intentional. Travis, rather than offering an alternative, frowned at me. "It's not that serious, Mom. Can't you just pick around the shrimp?" "Travis," I break out in hives and my throat swells. "You know this." He rolled his eyes. "You're probably exaggerating. You used to eat crab at that place on the pier. That was your father, not me. Melanie interjected. Well, there's salad and bread. That should be sufficient. Throughout that summer, I tried maintaining our relationship through regular calls and small gifts for both of them. Melanie's behavior grew increasingly hostile, while Travis became her echo chamber, dismissing my concerns and often suggesting I was becoming difficult or too sensitive. In August, I experienced chest pains while gardening and drove myself to the emergency room. Tests revealed a serious heart condition, requiring expensive medication and regular monitoring. My retirement insurance covered only a portion of the costs, leaving me with significant out-of-pocket expenses. When I called Travis to share this concerning diagnosis, he seemed distracted and hurried. That's tough, Mom. Have you looked into those prescription discount programs? Yes, but the medications still cost over $400 monthly, and my fixed income. Look, we're stretched pretty thin right now. Melanie just redid the kitchen, and our investment account took a hit last quarter. Maybe check with a social worker about assistance programs? I was stunned into silence. My son, who earned 6 figures, was suggesting I seek public assistance rather than helping with life-saving medication. After this conversation, I began hearing from extended family members who seemed concerned about my mental state. My sister Nancy called one evening, unusually hesitant. Jody, is everything okay? Travis mentioned you've been showing signs of confusion, paranoia even. What? I'm perfectly fine. Who exactly has he been talking to? Nancy sighed. He and Melanie had dinner with Cousin Beth last weekend. They expressed concern that you might be in the early stages of dementia. They said you've been making up stories about them, claiming they're mistreating you. I was speechless. Travis and Melanie were actively trying to discredit me to the family. As my medical bills mounted, and family members grew distant based on Travis and Melanie's claims, I felt increasingly isolated and betrayed. My neighbor Susan, one of the few people who regularly checked on me, stopped by one afternoon with her tablet. Jody, I think you should see this, she said gently, opening Facebook to Travis's page. There, in black and white, was a long post from my son. Difficult situation with mom. Signs of mental instability becoming more frequent. Paranoid accusations, memory issues, refusing medical help. Might need intervention to ensure proper care and protection of assets. Any advice from those who've dealt with aging parents appreciated. The comment section was filled with sympathetic responses, including several from Melanie expressing how heartbreaking it was to watch me decline and how they were exploring options for her care and financial management. My hands trembled as I read their systematic character assassination. They weren't just isolating me, they were building a case to control my life completely. The first unauthorized withdrawal from my retirement account occurred in September. While reviewing my quarterly statement, I noticed a transfer of $5,000 that I hadn't initiated. A call to the financial institution confirmed the money had been moved to an account at Travis's bank. Confused and alarmed, I confronted Travis during our next phone conversation. Did you transfer money from my retirement account? I asked directly. A long pause followed. I was going to tell you, he finally said. I needed capital for a short-term investment opportunity. It came up suddenly, and I knew you'd want to help. I'm looking at a 15% return within 6 months. Travis, that's illegal. You don't have authorization to access my accounts. Don't be dramatic, Mom. I have your power of attorney for emergencies, remember? From when you had your gallbladder surgery. That was temporary. And expired years ago, I countered, my alarm growing. What you did is theft. Theft? From my own mother? His voice turned cold. After everything you've said about wanting to help me succeed, I thought we were a team. His manipulation was so skillful that I found myself apologizing by the end of the call, though he did promise to return the money with interest by December. December came and went. When I called about the repayment, Travis explained that the investment needed more time to mature and promised funds by February. February brought excuses about market volatility. By April, the story changed to the investment having complications. Meanwhile, I discovered additional withdrawals, $3,000 here, $7,000 there, totaling nearly $30,000 over 6 months. Each time I confronted Travis, he had plausible explanations and renewed promises of repayment that never materialized. Reviewing my credit card statements revealed another disturbing pattern. Charges for high-end retailers, restaurants, and electronics stores I'd never visited appeared with increasing frequency. When I reported the apparent fraud to my credit card company, they sent documentation showing the cards had been physically present for the transactions, along with signatures that were close approximations of my own. During a particularly desperate week, when I had to choose between heart medication and paying my electric bill, I saw Travis and Melanie post vacation photos from Paris on social media. Melanie was wearing a diamond bracelet that looked remarkably similar to one I'd seen charged to my account for $12,000. My next credit card statement included charges from Parisian boutiques and restaurants. When I called Travis from the financial crimes office at my local police station, his tone immediately changed. "Mom, this is all a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "Remember, you gave us permission to use your cards for emergencies?" This business trip came up suddenly, and our corporate cards had reached their limit. We were going to transfer the funds to cover it next week. The officer listening to our conversation on speakerphone raised her eyebrows. "Travis, I never gave you permission to use my cards. And Paris isn't an emergency. Look, things have been stressful. Maybe you forgot. Your memory hasn't been the best lately." There it was again, the suggestion of mental decline. The officer scribbled a note. Gaslighting tactics, common in elder financial abuse. After consultation with the officer, I declined to press charges immediately, still hoping to resolve the situation within the family. Instead, I froze all my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and had new ones issued with strict monitoring. A week later, Travis called. Uncharacteristically agitated. "Mom, what's going on? I tried to use your Visa for a dinner with clients, and it was declined. I canceled all my cards due to fraud," I replied calmly. "Without telling me? That's inconsiderate. What am I supposed to do when I need emergency access to funds? Use your own money, Travis. You earn more in a month than I receive all year in retirement." He switched tactics. "Mom, I'm worried about you. These paranoid actions, the confusion about financial arrangements we clearly discussed. Melanie and I have been talking. Maybe it's time to consider assisted living, where you'd have proper supervision. I'm perfectly capable of living independently, Travis. That's what all seniors say right before a major crisis. Look, I've been researching how to get power of attorney renewed. It's for your own protection." After this conversation, I did some research of my own. The local senior center offered a workshop on elder financial abuse, where I learned my situation was textbook: isolation from support networks, gaslighting about mental competence, unauthorized use of finances, and threats of guardianship to maintain control. In May, I encountered Travis's childhood friend Alan at the grocery store. He seemed uncomfortable seeing me, glancing around as if looking for an escape. "Alan, how lovely to see you. How are your parents?" "They're good, Mrs. Whitaker." How are you doing with everything?" "Everything?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You know, the issues Travis mentioned. He's really concerned about you." "What exactly did my son tell you, Alan?" He looked at the floor. "Just that you've been having a tough time since retirement, that you sometimes get confused or upset over nothing, that you weren't always the easiest mom when he was growing up." "What does that mean?" Alan's voice dropped to a whisper. He said there were incidents, that sometimes you'd get angry and hurt him. That's why he's so worried about your current behavior. He's afraid it's returning. The accusation stole my breath. Travis had been a rambunctious child, but I had never, ever raised a hand to him. Not once. Now he was spreading lies about abuse to justify his current treatment of me. "Alan, that is absolutely false. Travis was never physically disciplined by me or his father." The doubt in his eyes told me he'd already decided which version to believe. I left the store in tears, the magnitude of Travis's betrayal crushing me. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my reputation, my history, my identity as a mother. By early June, I'd reached my breaking point. The financial abuse, the lies, the isolation tactics, the threats of guardianship, all of it had become unbearable. I spent a week documenting every unauthorized transaction, every manipulative conversation, every false claim about my mental state. With a file folder of evidence, I drove to Travis and Melanie's house on a Saturday morning, knowing they'd both be home. The house I'd helped them buy looked even more impressive than during my last visit. New landscaping adorned the front yard, and a luxury SUV I didn't recognize sat in the driveway beside Travis's sports car. The doorbell had been upgraded to a video system, and I watched the camera swivel toward me as I pressed the button. Travis answered, surprise evident on his face. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said firmly. "May I come in?" He hesitated before stepping aside. "Sure, but we've got plans later, so this isn't a great time." The interior had been renovated again. Designer furniture, original artwork, and expensive electronics filled the space that had been purchased, in part with my stolen money. "Is Melanie home?" I asked. "She's upstairs getting ready." "What's this about?" I set my folder on the coffee table. "It's about the money you've taken from me, the lies you've told about me, and the threats you've made regarding my independence." Travis's expression hardened. "If you've come to make more accusations, this conversation is over before it begins." "These aren't accusations," I replied, opening the folder. "These are facts. Bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals, credit card statements with fraudulent charges, screenshots of your social media posts questioning my mental competence." His eyes darted to the stairs, checking if Melanie was within earshot. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "Look, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is ridiculous. Yes, I borrowed some money from you. That's what family does. And yes, I've expressed concerns about your mental state because I am concerned. Your paranoia and accusatory behavior are exactly what I've been worried about. This isn't paranoia, Travis. It's evidence. Over $70,000 taken without my permission in the past year. That's not borrowing. It's theft. You owe me," he suddenly exploded, his face flushing. "Do you have any idea how many opportunities I missed because of you? Prestigious schools I couldn't attend because you couldn't afford them? Vacations my friends took that I watched from home? Career moves I couldn't make because I was worried about leaving you alone?" I was stunned by his outburst. "Travis, I worked 3 jobs so you could have a good life. I never held you back. I supported every dream you had." "You supported what you thought I should want," he countered bitterly. "You wanted a son who would make you proud, who would justify your sacrifices. It was always about you." "That's not true," I whispered, my heart breaking. Melanie chose that moment to descend the stairs, dressed immaculately in designer clothes likely purchased with my money. "Jody," she said coldly. "What an unexpected surprise." "She's here making accusations again," Travis told her, claiming we've stolen from her, lied about her. Melanie's perfectly painted lips curved into a smirk. "More paranoid delusions? Travis, this is exactly what Dr. Phillips warned us about. The persecution complex, the financial confusion." "There is no Dr. Phillips," I said steadily. "You've never had me evaluated by any doctor because you know I'm perfectly competent." "See how she gets?" Melanie said to Travis, as if I weren't present. "Combative, confused, rejecting help. It's textbook." "I'm not confused. I have evidence right here," I insisted, pointing to my documentation. "Travis has been systematically draining my accounts while telling family and friends I'm mentally unstable." "Evidence?" Melanie laughed. "Travis, your mother is having a full-blown episode. Maybe we should call someone." "By someone? You mean the police?" I challenged. "Good idea. Let's have them review these financial records." Travis stepped closer, his voice dangerously quiet. "You need to leave, now. Not until we address this. I want a repayment plan for everything taken from my accounts, and I want you to publicly retract the lies you've told about my mental state." "Or what?" Travis sneered. "You'll sue your own son? Go ahead. Who do you think people will believe? The successful financial advisor or his elderly, increasingly erratic mother?" "The evidence speaks for itself," I maintained, though my voice trembled. "Evidence can be interpreted many ways," Melanie interjected smoothly. "A concerned son helping his confused mother manage finances she can no longer handle. A loving son worried about a parent's declining cognitive abilities. Courts see these cases all the time, and they typically side with the caregiver, not the senior in denial about their limitations." "I'm not in denial about anything," I insisted. "And you're not my caregivers. You're exploiting me." "That's enough," Travis shouted, slamming his hand on the coffee table. I'm done with your accusations and ingratitude. Everything I've done has been for this family's best interest, including yours. Taking my retirement money was in my best interest? Charging thousands in luxury goods to my credit cards helps me how, exactly? His face contorted with rage. You self-righteous, manipulative old woman. You've been playing the martyr my entire life. Poor Jody, sacrificing everything for her son. Well, guess what? I never asked for your sacrifices. I never wanted this burden of being your entire reason for living. The verbal attack stung worse than any physical blow could have. I stood my ground despite tears forming in my eyes. I never saw you as a burden, Travis. I saw you as my son, whom I loved unconditionally. Unconditionally? He scoffed. Your love always had conditions. Make you proud, achieve, succeed, be worthy of your precious sacrifices. That's not true, I whispered. He stepped closer, towering over me. It is true, and now you're upset because I've built a life that doesn't revolve around you, because I have a wife who sees through your manipulative behavior. Melanie moved beside him, her arm sliding around his waist. Travis has been too kind to say it, but I will. You're toxic, Jody. You're trying to control him with guilt and financial strings. You're jealous of our success, our happiness. I've only ever wanted your happiness, I said to Travis. But that doesn't mean allowing you to abuse me financially or emotionally. Something snapped in his eyes. Before I could react, his hand swung out, connecting with my cheek with a sharp crack that echoed through the room. The force knocked me sideways, and I clutched the edge of the sofa to steady myself. The room fell silent. Even Travis seemed shocked by what he'd done. Then Melanie laughed, a high, cold sound that broke the stillness. Well, it was only a matter of time before she pushed you to that, wasn't it? Her approval seemed to embolden him. His momentary regret vanished, replaced by righteous anger. His hand struck again, harder this time. This is for every time you made me feel inadequate, he said, slapping me again. This is for the guilt trips. Another slap. The subtle manipulations. Slap. The disappointed looks when I didn't meet your expectations. Slap. I lost count as the blows continued. My ears rang, my vision blurred with tears, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth from where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. Through it all, Melanie's laughter provided a soundtrack to my humiliation and pain. Put her in her place once and for all, she encouraged. Show her who's really in control now. 13 times. Later, I would learn from the police report that Travis had struck me 13 times. In the moment, I could only focus on staying conscious, on breathing through the pain and shock of my own child attacking me physically. When he finally stopped, I was crumpled against the sofa, my face throbbing, blood trickling from my split lip. My purse and the folder of evidence had spilled across the floor. Get out of my house, Travis said, his voice eerily calm now. Don't come back, don't call, don't contact me or Melanie ever again. I gathered my scattered belongings with trembling hands, unable to look at the stranger who had once been my beloved son. As I stumbled toward the door, Melanie called after me. If you tell anyone about this, we'll make sure everyone knows about your mental problems. Who would believe you anyway? Somehow, I made it to my car, though I couldn't remember the walk down the driveway. As I fumbled with my keys, a woman approached from the neighboring house. Ma'am, are you all right? She asked, concern etched on her face. My name is Carol. I live next door. I couldn't find words, gesturing helplessly at my battered face. I saw what happened through the window, she said quietly. I took pictures, and I called the police. They're on their way. You shouldn't drive in this condition. Let me help you. Carol gently led me to her own car, just as a police cruiser turned onto the street. As officers approached Travis's house, Carol drove me directly to the emergency room, my world collapsing around me with each passing mile. The emergency room was mercifully quiet that Saturday afternoon. Carol stayed with me, providing a statement to the police officer who met us there while a doctor examined my injuries. Multiple facial contusions. Split lip, mild concussion, the doctor reported, gently cleaning the blood from my face. You'll have significant bruising, Mrs. Whitaker, but fortunately no fractures. The responding officer, a compassionate woman named Detective Lisa Reynolds, photographed my injuries and took my statement. Carol provided the photos she'd taken through the window, clearly showing Travis striking me repeatedly while Melanie looked on. "Mrs. Whitaker, what your son did is assault," Detective Reynolds explained. "The fact that he's your son doesn't make it any less criminal." "Will you arrest him?" I asked, my words slightly slurred from my swollen lip. She sighed. "We'll certainly question him and his wife, but I want to be honest with you about family violence cases. They can be difficult to prosecute, especially when the perpetrator has resources for good legal representation. Your son and his wife will likely claim you were having a mental episode, that he was defending himself, or trying to calm you down. But the photos help tremendously," she assured me. "But these cases rarely have neat resolutions. Are you safe at home? Is there someone who can stay with you for a few days?" Carol immediately offered her spare bedroom, but my sister Nancy lived just 40 minutes away. One phone call brought her rushing to the hospital, her face ashen when she saw my condition. "Jody, my God," she whispered, carefully embracing me. "Travis did this. I can't believe it." "There's more," I said, and showed her the financial documents I'd brought to confront Travis. Nancy took me to her home, where I spent the next week in a fog of physical pain and emotional devastation. The bruises on my face faded from angry red to purple to sickly yellow, but the wound to my heart only seemed to deepen. Detective Reynolds called with updates. Travis and Melanie had indeed claimed I'd been having a psychotic episode, becoming violent when they suggested professional help. Their story fell apart when confronted with Carol's photos and my documented injuries. However, the district attorney warned that prosecuting would be a lengthy, difficult process with no guarantee of significant consequences, especially as a first-time offender with community standing. I fell into depression, barely eating, spending days staring at the wall of Nancy's guest room. The betrayal felt complete and irrevocable. My only child, the center of my world for decades, had not only stolen from me and lied about me, but had physically attacked me with such hatred in his eyes. "Jody, you need to talk to someone professional," Nancy insisted after 2 weeks of watching me withdraw. "Not just about the assault, but about everything Travis has done." She arranged an appointment with a lawyer named Barbara Lewis, who specialized in elder abuse cases. I went reluctantly, still hoping for some resolution that wouldn't completely sever my relationship with my son. Barbara's office was warm and inviting, designed to put anxious clients at ease. She reviewed my documentation thoroughly, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Mrs. Whitaker, what you're describing is one of the most comprehensive cases of elder exploitation I've seen," she said finally. "Financial abuse, emotional abuse, physical assault, defamation, attempts to establish guardianship under false pretenses. Your son and daughter-in-law have been systematically victimizing you." "He's still my son," I said weakly. "I understand that makes this exponentially more painful," she acknowledged. "But we need to protect you from further harm. I'd like to bring in a forensic accountant to document every unauthorized transaction. We'll need statements from witnesses to his defamatory comments, like Alan and your family members, and we should act quickly, because there's something else you should know." Barbara turned to her computer, pulling up property records. "I had my assistant do some preliminary research. The house you helped your son purchase, the one you provided the down payment for? You're not just a contributor. According to county records, you're a legal co-owner." "What?" I gasped. "Your name is on the deed alongside Travis's. Melanie's name isn't on it at all. The mortgage is also in both your names, making you jointly responsible for the payments." I recalled the stack of documents I'd signed at the closing, trusting Travis completely. He never told me that. "It's likely they needed your income and assets to qualify for the mortgage amount," Barbara explained. "The important thing is this gives you legal rights regarding the property. Rights we can leverage for your protection." "What are you suggesting?" She outlined several options, from restraining orders to lawsuits, for financial recovery to foreclosure. But given the severity of the situation and the likelihood they'll continue trying to gain control of your assets, I'd recommend the most decisive action: selling the property. "Selling their house? Can I do that?" "It's not just their house, Mrs. Whitaker. It's legally yours as well. And yes, as a co-owner, you have the right to force a sale." The thought was overwhelming. It would be a complete severance, a declaration of war. Once done, there would be no possibility of reconciliation. I asked for time to think, returning to Nancy's house with a spinning head and heavy heart. That evening, a mutual friend called Nancy with disturbing news. Travis had been asking about attorneys specializing in competency hearings, specifically about having a parent declared legally incompetent. "He's actually going to try to have me committed," I whispered after Nancy relayed the conversation. "Not if we act first," she replied firmly. "Jody, he's already stolen your money, damaged your reputation, and physically attacked you. What more will it take for you to protect yourself?" Still, I hesitated. The next day, while reviewing my credit card statements to document the fraudulent charges, I discovered recent purchases that broke through my remaining emotional defenses: a $15,000 watch for Travis, a spa membership for Melanie, designer clothing from boutiques in New York and Los Angeles, all while I had been rationing my heart medication to make it last longer because I couldn't afford the full prescription. I called Barbara Lewis that afternoon. "I want to sell the house," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "How do we proceed?" She wasted no time, assembling a team including a real estate attorney and an agent specializing in quick sales. Given the housing market in Lake Oswego and the desirable property, she was confident we could find a cash buyer willing to close quickly. "The key is timing," Barbara explained. "We need to complete the transaction while Travis and Melanie are away from the property. Once the sale is finalized, the new owners can take immediate possession." Through careful monitoring of Travis's social media and information from mutual connections, we confirmed that both he and Melanie worked predictable hours, usually leaving the house by 8 in the morning and returning after 6 in the evening. We scheduled the closing for a Tuesday when they had posted about important meetings that would keep them at their offices all day. Barbara found a cash buyer, a tech executive relocating from California who was willing to pay above asking price for a quick, hassle-free transaction. The real estate attorney confirmed that as legal co-owner, I had every right to sell the property, particularly given the documented abuse. As the plan came together, my grief began transforming into something else: determination. For the first time since Travis's betrayal, I felt a sense of agency returning. I wasn't just a victim. I was a woman reclaiming her dignity and security. The morning of the sale arrived with perfect June weather, sunshine streaming through Nancy's guest room window as I dressed with unusual care. Today wasn't just about selling a house, it was about reclaiming my life. Barbara picked me up at 7:30, her car filled with legal documents organized in color-coded folders. We watched from a discreet distance as Travis and Melanie left for work in their separate luxury vehicles, both purchased, I now knew, using funds siphoned from my accounts. "They're gone," Barbara confirmed. "Let's proceed." We drove to the house where the real estate agent and moving team were already waiting. The agent used the lockbox code we'd obtained through legal channels to access the property. "Remember," Barbara cautioned as we entered, "we're only removing items that are provably yours or community property, nothing that can be definitively established as Travis's personal property." The moving team worked efficiently, following my directions about which items to pack. I moved through the house like a ghost, identifying the furniture and artwork purchased with my stolen funds, family heirlooms I'd given as gifts that could legally be reclaimed, and the few personal possessions I'd left during visits. In Travis's home office, a locked filing cabinet yielded to the locksmith Barbara had brought along. Inside, we found a disturbing cache of documents: applications for guardianship, medical evaluations to be completed without my presence, and a detailed timeline for having me declared incompetent within the next month, with paperwork already prepared to transfer all my remaining assets to Travis's control. "This confirms everything," Barbara said grimly, photographing each document for evidence. "They were planning to move against you imminently." By noon, the moving truck was loaded with recovered items. I'd decided to donate most of the furniture and household goods to a shelter for victims of domestic violence, keeping only truly meaningful items like photo albums and my late husband's belongings. At 1 o'clock, we met the buyers and their attorney at the title company. The tech executive and his wife were friendly and excited about their new home, completely unaware of the drama surrounding the property. "Just need your signature here, here, and here," the title agent indicated, sliding documents across the table. My hand trembled slightly as I signed, memories of blindly signing Travis's mortgage documents years earlier flashing through my mind. This time, I read every page carefully before putting pen to paper. By 2:30 it was done. The house was sold, the proceeds transferred to an escrow account pending final distribution. As co-owner, I was legally entitled to half the sale price, though Barbara had structured the transaction to ensure funds equivalent to my stolen money, plus the original down payment and interest, would be secured for me regardless of how Travis might contest the sale later. We returned to the property one final time for a walkthrough with the new owners. The house stood empty now, stripped of the possessions that had represented my son's betrayal. As I handed the keys to the excited couple, a weight lifted from my shoulders. "Congratulations on your new home," I said sincerely. "I hope you'll be very happy here." By 4 o'clock, all utilities had been transferred to the new owners' names. By 5, Barbara had filed notifications with Travis's employer, the police department, and building security that he was no longer a resident of the address and should not be permitted access to the property. At 5:45, my phone began ringing. Travis's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. And again. Text messages began flooding in, first confused, then angry, then threatening. "What have you done? There are strangers in my house. The police won't let me in my own home. I'll have you committed for this." I turned my phone off, handing it to Barbara. "I can't read anymore," I said quietly. "You don't have to," she assured me. "Everything he sends is additional evidence of his behavior. My associate is monitoring and documenting all communications." That evening, safe in Nancy's home, I experienced a complex mixture of emotions: vindication and grief, relief and loss, freedom and profound sadness. I had protected myself from further abuse, but at the cost of any relationship with my only child. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked Nancy as we sat on her porch, watching the sunset. "The right thing?" she repeated. "Jody, he stole from you, abused you, planned to have you declared incompetent, and physically attacked you. You didn't just do the right thing. You did the only thing a person with self-respect could do." Her words resonated with a truth I was just beginning to accept. Sometimes love meant setting boundaries, even painful ones. Sometimes the most loving thing you could do, both for yourself and for someone who had lost their way, was to say no more, and mean it. The days following the house sale passed in a blur of legal meetings, police interviews, and emotional processing. Travis attempted every avenue to reverse the sale, hiring an aggressive attorney who made threatening phone calls to Barbara's office until she filed for a restraining order. "He has no legal recourse," Barbara assured me. "The sale was completely legitimate. As co-owner, you had every right to sell the property." Travis's fury reached new heights when he discovered I'd documented his financial abuse and filed reports with the credit card companies and banks. The financial institutions launched investigations, freezing accounts and demanding repayment of fraudulent charges. A week after the sale, I returned to my own home, now secured with a new alarm system and cameras. Nancy stayed with me initially, but gradually I reclaimed my independence, rebuilding the life Travis and Melanie had nearly destroyed. With Barbara's guidance, I established a protected trust for the proceeds from the house sale and my recovered funds, ensuring Travis could never access my finances again. I purchased a modest but comfortable condominium in a secure building across town, close to friends and support services. Travis's desperate attempts to discredit me backfired spectacularly when the police investigation into the assault became public knowledge. The photos Carol had taken, showing him striking me repeatedly while Melanie watched, destroyed his claims that I was mentally unstable or that he had acted in self-defense. The district attorney eventually charged him with elder abuse and assault. Facing potential prison time, Travis accepted a plea deal, including probation, mandatory counseling, and significant community service. The public nature of the case brought professional consequences as well. Clients withdrew their business, and his firm placed him on administrative leave pending an ethics review. Melanie's reaction proved illuminating. As their financial situation deteriorated, her support for Travis wavered. Neighbors reported explosive arguments coming from the apartment they'd rented after losing the house. 3 months after the sale, she filed for separation, publicly blaming Travis for their downfall and portraying herself as an unwitting victim of his schemes. Extended family members, who had distanced themselves based on Travis's lies about my mental state, reached out one by one, apologizing for believing him without questioning. My sister Nancy had been instrumental in setting the record straight, sharing medical records confirming my mental competence and witness statements about Travis's deception. "I'm so sorry. Aunt Jody," my niece Jennifer said during a tearful visit. "We should have known better than to believe those things about you." "You couldn't have known," I replied, finding forgiveness easier than I'd expected. Travis was very convincing. 6 months after the assault, I received an unexpected letter. The handwriting on the envelope was immediately recognizable as Travis's, though less confident than I remembered. I considered throwing it away unopened, but ultimately decided to read it with my therapist present for support. "Mom," the letter began, "there are no words adequate to express my remorse for what I've done. The person I became with Melanie is someone I no longer recognize or want to be. The financial pressures, the lifestyle expectations, the constant striving for more gradually warped my values until I was capable of hurting the one person who always supported me unconditionally. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm getting help. The court-mandated therapy has forced me to confront truths about myself I've been avoiding for years. My actions were inexcusable, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being your son again, even if our relationship can never be repaired." The letter continued with specific acknowledgments of his wrongdoing, acceptance of responsibility, and recognition of the pain he'd caused. There were no excuses, no attempts to justify his behavior, just accountability and remorse. My therapist watched my reaction carefully. "What are you feeling, Jody?" "Sadness," I admitted, "but also relief. This sounds like the son I used to know, not the person he became. Do you want to respond?" I considered the question seriously. "Not yet. I need time, and he needs to demonstrate that this change is real and lasting." Over the next year, Travis continued therapy beyond the court requirements. He sent occasional updates on his progress, but never pushed for reconciliation or made demands on my time or emotions. He found a new job at a smaller firm, accepted the significant step down in prestige and income, and moved to a modest apartment. When mutual acquaintances mentioned seeing him, they reported he spoke of me only with respect and took full responsibility for his actions. Melanie finalized their divorce, extracting what little she could before moving back to her hometown. Travis made no effort to contest her demands, accepting this consequence of his choices as well. Meanwhile, my own life flourished in unexpected ways. Through a support group for elder abuse survivors, I discovered a passion for advocacy. What began as my own healing journey evolved into volunteer work helping other seniors recognize and escape exploitative situations. I completed training as a peer counselor and started speaking at community centers about financial protection and family dynamics. The settlement from the house sale, combined with recovered funds from Travis's fraud, provided financial security I hadn't expected in my later years. I was able to not only afford my medications, but also pursue interests long deferred: art classes, travel with Nancy, and supporting causes important to me. 18 months after the assault, I agreed to meet Travis for coffee in a public place, with my therapist's support and Nancy waiting nearby. He looked older, humbler, the designer clothes and arrogant posture replaced by simple attire and genuine contrition. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, his voice catching. "I know I don't deserve this opportunity. I'm here to listen," I replied carefully. Our conversation was awkward, painful, but also healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. Travis made no excuses for his behavior, offered no justifications, simply acknowledged the harm he'd caused and the work he was continuing to do to understand why he'd been capable of such cruelty. "The therapist helped me see how I'd been carrying resentment for years," he explained. "Not because you were a bad mother, but because I couldn't live up to this perfect image I thought you expected. When Melanie came along, she tapped into that insecurity, helped me twist it into something ugly that justified taking from you instead of giving back." I listened without interrupting, recognizing the courage it took for him to face these truths. "I don't expect us to ever return to what we were," he concluded. "But I hope someday you might allow me to demonstrate that I've changed, that I understand the magnitude of my betrayal, and that I truly regret the pain I caused you." I couldn't offer immediate forgiveness or promises of reconciliation. Instead, I suggested a path forward. Small steps, consistent actions over time, respect for boundaries. "That's all I can offer right now." He nodded, accepting these terms without protest. Over the next 2 years, those small steps gradually rebuilt a different kind of relationship. Not the uncomplicated mother-son bond we'd once shared, but something more mature, with clearly established boundaries and mutual respect. Travis continued therapy, maintained his more modest lifestyle, and proved through consistent behavior that his change was genuine. Our relationship would never be fully healed, the scar tissue of betrayal and violence creating permanent boundaries. But within those boundaries, a cautious connection reemerged, one built on honesty rather than manipulation, respect rather than exploitation. Through this painful journey, I discovered strength I never knew I possessed, a capacity for self-protection balanced with measured compassion. I learned that sometimes loving someone means establishing consequences for harmful behavior, that enabling abuse serves neither the victim nor the perpetrator. Most importantly, I discovered that my identity and worth were never dependent on my role as Travis's mother. I was Jody Whittaker, a woman of courage and resilience, with gifts to share and a life to live fully on my own terms. 5 years after that terrible day when Travis struck me 13 times in front of his laughing wife, I stood before an audience of fellow seniors, sharing my story of survival and renewal. The faces looking back at me reflected recognition, inspiration, and hope. The most important lesson I've learned, I concluded, is that love without respect is not really love at all. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do, both for ourselves and for those who hurt us, is to say no more and mean it. Age doesn't diminish our right to dignity and safety. In fact, our years of experience should reinforce our understanding of our own worth. The applause was warm, but the conversation that followed was warmer still, as others shared their own stories of finding courage and setting boundaries. In their words, I heard echoes of my own journey and confirmation that from the darkest betrayal can come the most profound growth. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? I'd be so grateful if you would share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the strength they need during a difficult time. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the strength to honor your own worth, even when it's challenging.